Welcome back, my people. This is the Road to CA podcast, the show for aspiring chartered accountants to inform, inspire, and empower the difference makers of tomorrow. Today, this one's an exciting one, guys. We have a man of many talents and a man of hard work and excellence. He puts in 110% in every single thing he does. But don't take it from me, guys. Take it from the star-studded portfolio of clients he's worked with. He's the CEO and founder of Meek Media, a company which has provided video, photography, and podcast services to the likes of Hollard, Brawl, Wits Business School, Amazon Web Services, Carte Blanche, Jet, and many others. We could go all day. Yes. By the way, just matter of fact, he's a CASA. Just by the way. Most importantly, he's a Christian man of faith, a family man who's a husband to his wife, a father to his 2 boys, and a servant of the community, running the Family Hope Foundation. He's a corporate content creator. He's a creative. We're joined by Kevin Buertes. Kevin, how are you, man?
Oh, bro, you're far too kind with your introduction. Feels like you're setting me up here for something. I hope I can at least meet a bit of that expectation, yeah?
The nice thing about my intros is I never lie. That's the nice thing. You know, I'm trying to be ethical, trying to adhere to the fundamental principle of the code of professional conduct of psycha, of integrity.
Yeah.
So I didn't lie, man.
Nah, it's all good, man. You're on point. It's just always, sometimes when you face with that truth, you're like, yeah, people are gonna expect a lot now, eh? So you better step up.
The nice thing, and Kevin, like, I actually, this is an idea that we were chatting about, was it last week with another aspiring CA, about how this pressure to meet those sort of qualifications, expectations, a lot of us feel like imposters when we don't, right? That's imposter syndrome. But there's actually a power in it. Imposter syndrome actually has a power for you to act in that standard that others expect of you. So I fortunately know you actually do have the competence that backs you, and you have the experience to give the value that I know aspiring CAs are going to get today. So it's going to be a good one.
Sharp. Let's do it.
Okay, Kevin,
Go.
firstly,
Yeah, man.
let's go back. This is what we do at the Road to CA. We go all the way back. Where did this whole CA thing come into the picture, and slot in who Kevin Buertes is in that answer?
Sure. All right. My name is Kevin Buertes. I'm a qualified CASA. And the CA thing, actually, I'd only probably heard about it properly in my matric year. So I did my high school at a school in Bosmont. It's kind of like central South Johannesburg, westish. If you're going to look on the map over there, it's at a high school called St. Barnabas College. And they didn't offer accounting as a subject. So that's a first crazy fact to kick it off. So I had I achieved quite well in my maths and all my subjects going in, and I didn't know what I was gonna do, in the following year. So just to backtrack from that, my parents had passed on while I was still young. My mom passed when I was 10, and my dad when I was 17. So for the most part, I was actually raised by my siblings. I've got 4 brothers and a sister, and they
Sure.
really did their
Think
best
family.
and tried to raise me. And you know what I mean? When you see the amount of effort and work that those guys were putting in, it really set a good tone for me, albeit under difficult circumstances. But when you see people putting in the graft, working, on Christmas Day so that they can get double time, in call centers, that kind of thing, then you realize like, hey man, you gotta hustle and you gotta make it happen, in an ethical, in a good way. So in any case, so I didn't know what I was gonna study afterwards. I got through most of my high school with partial bursaries, to just help me along. And then somebody had recommended to me, I'd done like this Miller-Briggs type indicator test, where they kind of classify, and one of the things was an accountant that they said on there. And then there was a lady at my school that said, hey, why don't you try applying for some bursaries and just see what happens on that. So I had applied through to PwC, through to Deloitte. Both had offered me a bursaries, but not throwing shade at anyone, but PwC had, like, they only came back to me after varsity had actually started the next year, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll give you a bursary." But at that time, I already said, "Look, I'm going with Deloitte." Deloitte on point, they were a great family to help me out, and they took a chance on me. I think to an extent, without having not touched an accounting textbook of my first day into varsity. But it is something I think that's worth noting. I studied at UJ, and actually at UJ's policy they don't require you to have accounting to study the chartered accounting route. They make sure that you have your maths. In fact, I had some friends that aced they got distinctions for accounting at high school, that had to take the bridging course for the CA route because their maths wasn't up to scratch. So
Yo.
I guess in the grand scheme of things, maybe they knew something that we didn't. But I got into the program over there, and man, it was crazy. So first year, you walk into a hall there at UJ. It's a hall of 400 people. There's 2 classes of it twice a week. So I would be attending 4 of those classes. Then there was an accounting A, which was kind of like the accounting standard grade class for guys that weren't majoring in accounting. I was attending that class as well because I didn't know what the hell was going on in the accounting in the CA stream.
What's a debit? What's a credit? Hey, yo.
Like one of my friends, fortunately, like I made friends fairly quickly. There was a bunch of us that were in there, and one of my friends, her name's Rania. She gave me a breakdown of what an income statement looks like revenue, cost of sales, gross profit, and I went down over the next 3 days. I tried to memorize what is actually all this because I didn't even understand these terms, bro. Like, what the hell is OPEX? In principle, I understood. I understood what it is, right? But it wasn't it. But, if you think about it, the accounting things, all of these classifications, it's actual business. If you run an actual business, this is just ways of classifying it. And just a side note, by that time, I'd already been running like 2 or 3 side hustles. By the time that I started varsity, I was doing the photography thing. I'd kicked it off in my matric year. I used to buy and sell PS1 games, PlayStation 1. Yes, I was there with the PS1, guys. I used to buy the games and sell them. And yeah, just just hustle wherever you can up until that time. So I understood the concepts already from a business perspective. I just didn't know what OPEX is. I didn't know what cost of sales, what is how it actually slots. So anyway, got through first year. I studied like you won't believe, like crazy. Still till today, probably one of my greatest achievements is getting 50% on my first accounting exam.
Whoa,
Like the first
that's
test,
hectic.
the basic one.
We don't get 50.
Where all of you
not
guys,
the first.
yeah, all of you guys that did accounting, yeah, that one you just cruise by. We didn't even study because they asked you what is a debit or what is an asset. It's a resource controlled by an entity as a result. Yes, bro. I got through on a 50. Like that was like my crowning achievement because it was just a realization that hey, maybe you can do it. But so I think the important thing what they did with why the maths was so important was the idea of concepts, of abstract concepts. If you've ever done any algebra or geometry, oh, that sucks. But it's the stretching of the mind, being able to understand it. And being on the back foot, I had to work like 2-3 times as harder than the guys who were on cruise mode. So I was always lagging, always falling behind the guys. But come that like mid-second year, going into third year, that's when it actually turned in comparison to again my counterparts. Because they understood the basics and that stuff. It was a cruising, but and I'd been grinding and like really trying to put in hours to get things. Come third year, there was a switch. Now you started getting deeper into the IASs, into the IFRS, and because I'd been used to working like significant hours, like trying to put in the work, like it was just whereas for other people it was like stepping on a treadmill because suddenly it just started shooting past. So a lot of the guys dropped off over the years. We were 13, I think, that started in first year, and there was only 2 of us that had actually gone the whole way through without repeating. So and that's a general thing. You probably see it as well, even when you are there in Pretoria in your classes and that. Generally, it's almost like the classes reduce by between 30 and 50% each year. You would have it's something along that lines. If you're talking about
It is
first year, like
similar.
one or
It
like
is similar.
first year to
Yeah.
first year. So you'll come into a class and there'll be lots of people, but a lot of the guys are maybe repeating second or third year, and you like going in with them. So it's a normal like I don't want to say normal, right? It's never it's but that's the way that the things progress. So yeah,
And
and
it's
yeah,
it's it's
got
how it usually goes. People fail in accounting. That's just how it
you
usually
do.
goes.
You
Yeah.
do. And I'll tell you something, like there was I was very fortunate, I mean, that I had a bursary with Deloitte. I had friends who had to work while studying. So that was like really, really tough. I remember I had a friend who had failed a CTA, a fourth year, at Deloitte, and Deloitte allowed it was the 1 year. I think they only did it once. They allowed those guys to go and do their first year articles during the day, and in the evening they would then come to. They had an arrangement with UJ where they would do evening classes in our honors year, and so they would come from a full day of working in articles, and then still
Sure.
try to put in graph. And like I think the pass rate on that class was something like between 15 and 20%. It
Yeah, and
wasn't
it
the
makes
the greatest
sense.
project.
It makes sense
But
because
but I had a,
the
I had
the
a friend that pulled it through. Yeah. So it was like,
oh dang.
uh,
That's
she
another
did,
thing
yeah,
that
three.
actually me and my brother, we had an episode, and he spoke
Yeah.
of how yes, there's this 15 or 20% success statistic,
Yeah.
but if you go deeper into the statistic, if you do what the 80 to 85% people do, you are 100% likely to fail. If you do what the 15 to 20% did, you're 100% likely to succeed. So there's always a
Yeah.
story beneath the statistic. As much as the odds will be stacked against you if you're in your articles and you're doing CTA, if you are in that context right now, I promise you there's someone out there. And Kevin's, he's clearly showing you there was.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just the wisdom comes in on knowing what's the difference between the 20 and the 80. That's where the challenge is coming in, right? Because it's again one of those cases where you don't know what you don't know. Because that infamous guy tried explaining that. I remember once, and everybody got confused. But like, you know what you know what you don't know what you know, and then you don't know what you don't know. Very confusing to try to explain it. But effectively, like, it's difficult to understand what the other 20% is doing if you've been doing 80% your whole life and all your friends are doing what we classify as that 80%. So it's in the networking, it's in the speaking to the lecturer, it's in that kind of thing where you get somebody else's counter view, then they'll be like, oh wait, I've been doing it like this the whole time, but you're telling me to do it like this. And that's what helps bring about that change.
A new
So yeah.
perspective. That's what I'm also finding through the podcast. It can change a
Yes.
life. So I actually
Yes.
failed my third year in accounting because I didn't know why I was here. I was coasting throughout. I wasn't really serious. And then I found out about different paths. I found out about more opportunities, a vaster, a more vast future beyond CASA. And then I was like, yo, I messed up. If I had found that out in first year, I wouldn't actually have been in the place I am. But I can only say that in
Sure.
hindsight.
Yeah. And that's the thing, but let me tell you, this hindsight thing, it's still something that I grapple with. It's still, I wish I had done some things differently in the first year. I wish that I had networked better through my articles, but it's one of those things that you can only appreciate after having gone through it. And I mean, it's many years since I did it, and I still have that regret. No, it's regret hindsight, and it's just being able to be at peace that I think where I take my piece from, and this is going to be my encouragement to you and to anyone, really effectively, right? Is if you can look back and say, did I do my best? Like genuinely, like, did I do my best on it, right? Because we can't ask you for more than your best. If you had given your best and there's circumstances that are outside of your control that happen, you can't change that. But internally with what you do, and that's what's going to allow you to sleep at night. But it's when you're not doing your best, like if you have that honest conversation with yourself when no one's around. and you realize like actually I stuffed up. I was partying too much.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There's always the behind. There's always a beneath the failure, and if it was because you weren't giving your best,
yeah,
but the thing is, Kevin, I think that everyone's doing the best with what they have. That's what I actually think. I think that it's because there's maybe a specific piece of information that you don't have. Maybe it's because of a particular belief that you have of yourself. I think like everyone's doing the best with what they have, but now what information does, more information does, is it lifts the ceiling. It increases that best, and it changes your perspective. And now you can, let's say for an example, if you were when you were going to school and you were growing up told that you are X level of intelligence, you are not smart. That's the belief that's permeating your mind. And so the actions will follow the same. And maybe you just won't work hard in mathematics because you just don't believe that you can do well in it.
yeah. Bro, let me tell you, I 150% subscribe to that. And if I can just, it's gonna be it's a side segue, but it will segue in.
Okay.
So I was generally like a top student in most subjects, but this Afrikaans thing I just struggled with, bro. It just didn't make sense. Albeit I'm like colored, I'm supposed to come from a Afrikaans speaking people, all of that.
Yeah.
But I just absolutely struggled with it, grade 8, grade 9, it just like it wasn't making sense. And then we had this really towards the end of grade 9, I had a really, really good Afrikaans teacher, Mrs. Kruger, like this old white lady that had enough money, but she was still teaching us just because she could, because she loved what she did. And she would do these tests where if you got 20 out of 20, she'd give you $20, And I was never in that range, right? Because I was always getting like 15. And it was like these weekly tests. You had to learn the words, and then you had to write a sentence with it and all that. And one of my best friends at that time was like super bright in Afrikaans. His dad would write out all the sentences for him to memorize and that thing, right? He was never getting the 20, never getting the 20. And then once, just in one paper, it's probably a fluke or something. I mean, I really I tried the once. And I'm sure this woman had grace on me because there was probably some errors or something and she liked me. But she gave me 20 on the paper. There was something that clicked in that moment. Apart from getting 20 Rand. And I mean, this is now many years ago. 20 Rand actually held value, right? Like proper value. But there was something that clicked that said, why not? Again, you don't know what you don't know, and you need somebody else to just see, that sees the potential of something that have in you. And that, I promise you, sparked off something where I went from maybe number 12th or 13th in the grade to being the top student thereafter in Afrikaans, grade 10, 11, and 12, and I got the distinction in it in matric. Now, I'm not saying it to brag on things, but what I'm saying is that sometimes it's just the confidence, the classic, Mandela line, it's only impossible until somebody does it. It's only impossible for you until somebody just gives you the belief that you can do it, and then you go and do it. So very much, I think that is, like you said, you put your best, but it's your best according to your standard as well. And that's what you were talking about, raising that ceiling. Because once you realize that, hey, maybe I can do this, then suddenly your best is better than your previous best.
Exactly. So I really think at every level, I think we're doing the best we can. All we need is that little nudge, that little push. That story, you came back, Kevin. You mentioned that you regretted something, and I want to go back there, and it's a point that I actually would have loved to go with you.
Yeah.
You regretted not networking enough. Let's talk about networking. In fact, before this, when we were chatting in the pre-chat that I usually have with my guests, you mentioned this idea of the 7 degrees of separation. Can you explain networking? Some of your tips around it, and explain that idea of the 7 degrees of separation.
It's quite the epic thing when you. So this is now the idea. It makes sense now with LinkedIn. If you use LinkedIn now, this concept will make more sense. But now let's just talk a pre-LinkedIn. There was this, and I don't know who it is that sparked it off, but they have this, the idea that every human on the earth is connected via 7 contacts. So it's these 7 degrees of separation. So I don't know Barack Obama, or just as an example, but I probably have somebody in my network who knows somebody else, who knows somebody else, who knows somebody else, who knows Barack Obama. So if I could work out that trail, I could in theory get in contact with him. And LinkedIn makes some sense of this, because you have like your first connection, and then you have a second connection, which is basically a connection of your connection. And I hope I'm trying to clarify it without confusing people, but it's this idea that everybody is connected on it. So if you are able to make an impression on your first network, the people that are close to you, and thereafter make an impression on the second and the third, it really does help you when you're trying to reach out to somebody else, because you've got this good rapport with your first, second, third connections on right. And if you realize how small the world actually is and how you can be connecting to everybody, then suddenly it becomes a game that is playable by anybody. It's not just for the well-connected or the affluent. While it does help, of course it helps. Of course it helps when if your father is Nicky Oppenheimer. You know what I mean? That does go ahead of you, right? But it doesn't cancel you out of the game. Stacked up against you, but you're not out of the game.
That is a powerful idea for, I think, students to also realize that, guys, on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You know one person that knows another person that knows a person, maybe, or we could even go a bit back on that could hook you up with the next job, with your articles, with the job beyond CASA, with a new perspective. Like, those are the people that are actually within your grasp. And I think it's such a powerful idea for students to start now. Start now. Like, you don't have to wait for when you're a CA. You can start now. Get to know people now. Get a LinkedIn. I think that's a huge one. Connect with Kevin. His LinkedIn will be linked in the show notes. And he's he's there. He's one of the people who are there to give, and he's got this wealth of knowledge around the platform, and he's willing to extend a helping hand. In terms of networking, still, I want to even go deeper on this one. There was this idea that I realized that, when they say the cliche of it's not about what you know, it's about who you know.
Yeah.
I think it's missing something, and it's something I've realized with the podcast. Yes, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, but it's also about who knows you. And can you riff off of that idea quickly?
Yeah, who knows you? It's exactly. Look, so I agree on all of those statements. Let me just break down the previous one, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. I think there comes a point where what you know does have to come to the fore.
Yes.
Unless it's like politics. We see some people that don't know much, that are in really high positions because of what they know. So that's where that cliche actually does find feet. And the reason why it's a cliche is because people use it a lot. And why do people use it a lot? Because it's probably true, right? So who you know does make a difference, and who knows you, and that's an important thing. Like, it's, you can, if you are on somebody's radar, for whatever, however they're able to, you want to be front and center in that person's mind when they are thinking about anything remotely that's connected to you and connected to your outcomes and what it is that you're trying to achieve. So something that I try to do, and this is kind of coming in with the LinkedIn thing. I'm trying to play the LinkedIn game as best as I can, and in the LinkedIn game, a lot of it revolves around your connections that you have, but also how you show up. It's a big thing. So I believe, yes, you can type things. You can, there's ways that you can text, and let's just even talk about it on like a WhatsApp. I can send you a text, and you can read it however you want to read it. I've had cases, and I can almost guarantee you that you've had it, and everybody that's listening to the podcast or watching it has had it, where you misread something, right? Then you read a tone into it, and you're like, what the hell? How could he say that about me? And when you eventually talk to me, it's like, no, man, I didn't mean it like that. It was, it was like, and then it's like, oh. So text can have tone read into it. I can phone you, right? I can so we can speak as we as people that are listening on here, so that you can hear my tone, but you can't see my facial expression, right? So I can be grinning while I'm telling you something, and then you can kind of read my body language, and my voice may be sprightly and stuff, but if I'm like slumped over and like, then I'm not engaged and that kind of thing. But when you get the combination of it, like video, that makes a big difference. So video and in person, if we can, in person is like the top end, but video is like right underneath it, where you get to see the person, you get to speak to them, you see their mannerisms, their quirks, things that make them, unique, and you get to almost become likable, provided that you have things that appeal to the person. Daniel Priestley is and I would recommend you guys to go and check him out. He's very, very big on this idea of being, known and liked, like in terms of becoming a key person of influence. He's like on this bus on this thing. But the idea is just that as people see you, as they hear you, they'll either be drawn into you through your personality, or they'll be repelled. But no middle ground. We try to move away from the middle ground, and through LinkedIn, through the connections and the way the algorithm gets served and the way that you're speaking, I'm a big proponent of videos. So even though I may not have you as a connection, as we did. I mean, let's use us as an example, right? You saw some of my videos that I post on LinkedIn, and you were like, oh wait, I actually maybe let me go and chat to this guy. He looks likable, I hope, but he looks approachable, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
You sent me a message, and I was like, yeah, in line with the way that I tried to communicate. We chatted back, and I was like, trying to be as chilled as I normally am. So that's a big thing. Like, how do you show up in the world? So I'm a big fan of putting yourself out there on video, and it's difficult when you start off, because we all have this spotlight mentality, spotlight theory that we have. Like, we on the stage and there's a spotlight on us, and everybody's standing there waiting to judge you and to say, so you're starting a podcast, how dare you?
Yeah.
Like, who do you think you are that you're starting a podcast? You're not Joe Rogan. What the hell? Oh, you're showing up with your video on LinkedIn. Who the hell are you? You think a movie star? And this is me. I didn't even say any of that. No, I never heard that from anybody. That's my
Yeah.
own. That's my own. Me talking to myself on it. But if you can get past that and actually show up, get yourself out there, people will start seeing your personality and become familiar with it. So there's times where you can meet somebody, and it's almost like in their minds they know you, because they've seen you in video, they've heard you on the radio or on the podcast, and it's your first time meeting them, but they chatting to you as if like they know. So that's the idea of being able to, as you expand, as you put content out, you get to be on other people's radar purely by the way that those algorithms are set up to be able to dish new contacts, new connections. And it's not just LinkedIn, it's your Insta, it's YouTube, it's pretty much all of them. That's how people, that's how they're trying to push it to grow networks and that. So I don't even know if I answered your question at the end of it all. but
Absolutely.
but yeah, that's
Absolutely. I asked you to expand on the idea, and I think what we just did now links perfectly into the topic, which I think it's life changing, and it's huge for all aspiring CAs, which is personal branding. I think that's what you were alluding to, Kevin. Now guys, we've got an expert. We've called it an expert at the Road to CA. Just know that. What is personal branding? And why should I, as a student, who doesn't even have anything to show, like I failed Finman just last week, why should I be building a personal brand?
Why should you build a personal brand? So let's maybe just define what each of these is. So branding, as if you go into Google, there's a whole bunch of different definitions. The one that I like, it's this guy by the name of Martin Neumeyer that I'd come across. He says a brand is the gut feeling that somebody has about you or a thing. Because branding can be personal, it can be corporate and that. But it's that gut feeling that you have You'll get Alex Hormozy that says branding is just associating two things together. So if I see you, what do I associate you with? And that. So if you take that concept that it's a gut feeling what somebody has and what they associate with, and the personal being you, so you then ask the question, well, how do I show up? What feelings do people have about you or about me? And if you take it like Bezos says, what is it that people say about you when you're not in the room? Right? So let's think about that. If my mistake that I made, one of the things that I regret, it's not really regret, but it's just something that if I could go back 20 years and tell myself, it would be that, the CA, and I think you've mentioned this on one or two of your podcasts that I listened to, the CASA designation is not a destination. It's part of the journey. It's a stopover. It's going to help you to get a seat at the table. It's definitely going to build rapport. It goes ahead of you. The CASA the brand itself is very good. I've been to, to the UK, been to the US, and when you have a CA, the equivalent, of course, in the US, CPA, it's ACCA in the UK. But it goes ahead of you, right? So that's really going to help you to build rapport. But it's only part of the journey. If you're just going to end there, then you're going to miss it. Because what it's all got to tie up with is how does it all relate to you? To you as Alunga, to me as Kevin. And the problem that you have is when things are when you don't have a brand that's going to stand out and you just kind of fall into the crowd, you become something of a commodity. Now, commodities that we have are usually things that are ubiquitous or that are common, right? So, for example, if I was going to buy water, right? And like I didn't really mind about which brand it is. What's the only differentiating factor with me on what bottle I'm going to choose? Most likely.
Price. Probably price.
Price, right? Whatever the cheapest, because it doesn't matter. Water is water, right? But if I was a water fundi, then suddenly a no-name brand versus a Valpre versus, all the other brands that you have, then suddenly those things start to distinguish. Likewise, even when you come in with your CASA, what is it that's going to set you apart versus every other guy? Because if you're just going to come here and deliver the numbers and do the job, then I might as well just get the guy that's next to you that I can get for 30% less. Or why not even, I dare say, like what they did in the US, we're going to just offshore the business, the US Deloitte will offshore the business through to India because those guys can do the exact same job that you're doing, just at 80% less. I mean, it's a harsh reality, and that's the way that business works. But that's what's going to happen. So just coming back to this idea of when you have a personal brand, you start moving away from being commoditized to working in a business or a competition, a market of one of one. Because once you start leaning into who you are, your personality, your abilities, what you studied, if it, in this case is the CASA, what's the other hobbies that you do? What are you doing outside of things? What are you doing in your community? All of these things, right? All help to give you this unique perspective that makes you you. And that can set you apart from the competition, provided that people can actually see that differentiator in you. And that's the importance that we have about personal branding, is because, yes, I've got my CASA, but I'm so much more than that. Here's a person that's involved, that's, I'm trying to be involved in my community. I'm trying to reach out to other people. I've got a bit of a hectic past, in terms of how I had to hustle my way in and get things going. And it's all of these things that now suddenly I'm not just a chartered accountant. I'm suddenly a guy that's relatable. Somebody that maybe you can, that you would want to actually maybe chat to. And once you start building that kind of rapport and I start to reach out to you because I see that you have a position available or you've got a project that you're running, I've now set myself apart from average Joe that's just putting in a job application on the side. And that's that idea with personal branding. It's the way that you're going to get the differentiator, but it's a differentiator that you don't need to put a facade on for. I think that's probably the absolute worst that you have to do, where you have to, I don't know, change who you are, You have to, yeah, if you're going to be in America, you got to change your accent if you want to be like them or whatever. Or, you can say that, you can change your accent here in South Africa, you can dress in a certain way, you can do all of those things. And the minute that you start moving outside of of who you are, and not and in a bad way, because of course it's good to, you want to step up with the way you dress, you want to step up with the way you look, you want to, you go to the gym, look a bit better, you want to improve that. But when it's completely against what you believe in and that thing, then it's like totally counterintuitive, because everybody can fall in love with this person and you can hate it because you're trying to put on something. So it's just like being in a natural state where, as I'm talking to you now, if you met me in the shopping center and we started chatting, provided that I didn't have my children jumping over me and that crazy thing.
Yeah.
But if you just came up to me and chat, like this is how I'd show up. This is probably how I'm gonna show up. And that's what the personal brand does. It really, really helps to differentiate you so that you can make that difference and get on people's radar. That's the long, short explanation.
I think also just to sort of just to translate that, like it's effortless, man. It's effortless, as you said. Like you don't have to try be anyone else. And on that same point of personal branding, strategically, don't be better, be different, be yourself.
Yes.
When you lean into the brand, you, as you said, are one of one. There's no other you. And if you can learn to leverage that, you learn to not be a commodity. I think this idea, it's very powerful for differentiating yourself for the rest of your life. I think this is an asset, a personal brand that you're investing in. You said on a previous podcast that one of your seniors said that not all CAs are created equally. Can you please just elaborate on that?
Yeah, that was a rude awakening. I think that I had. It was the third year. I was in my first year, and he, in a moment of frustration, because he had been handed a file from one of the other third years, and he was
Articles.
kind of going through it. Articles. Sorry, clarify there. In articles, and he made that comment. He said not all CAs are created equal, because he was trying to clean up the mess that they had. And there was a bit of a pause that I had, and I just kind of ran with it. But I've seen that happen. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it throughout. I've encountered some horrid CASAs. Like just in terms of we like how did you get here? That kind of thing. And then you get some brilliant CAs that are like absolutely amazing, and it'd be like, wow, like
Makes sense.
I'm in awe of it, right? And so again, like it's just a qualification. The way that I like to think of it is that if we were all going to let's use Kyle, if we were all going to Kyalami to go and race, the CASA, if you go into that qualification, that would be the equivalent of like pulling up in a Ferrari. It's gonna get you that up to there, right? But do you know how to drive it?
Oof.
So there's guys that come up that have only done bookkeeping, right? And they're rocking up on this hypothetical race with a Polo Vivo, but damn, do they know how to drive? They know how to drive. So they may not hit you on something, but they know how to corner. They know how to do what they need to do in that race, right? So if you think of it like in that way, I've met, and this is not just for CASAs, and it's part of that thing where I tell you that the CASA is it's part of the journey and not the destination. I have met super brilliant people that are not CASAs. I was sold, I don't want to say a lie, but you got sold this idea that once you're a CASA, you're like, the world's gonna bow at your feet. Like I've got it made in that, right? And you get into situations where there's people with different backgrounds that are significantly smarter than you, that understand your own thing that you're supposed to be the boss at, IFRS, whatever, and this is me, and a guy with an engineering degree with a little bit more experience can actually see what is done over there and do it. You got the bookkeeper that will ace you may not know the latest, application or whatever guide that needs to happen on it, but they know how our income statement flows and they know how to move things around and all of that. So yes, we're not all created equally. Ultimately, it's what do you do with it? What is it that's going to set you apart with this? And how are you going to be able to drive your Ferrari? That's CASA. It's don't get me wrong. It's an amazing ticket, bro. Like, you get into conversation with people and you just drop it that, I'm a chartered accountant, and you see how people's opinions change. Unfortunately, that's how it is. People's opinions suddenly start shifting to you. Like, there's a bit more respect that comes with it and all of that, right? And it's nothing that you're like trying to get out to people. It's just because that's what comes with the brand. But you have to use it. The last thing that you want to do is get into a position because of your CASA, and then you don't know how to drive this Ferrari. And it's happened. I've had I myself had to clean up other guys' mess. So you're like, yo, bro, I don't know how you got through.
It gets into this idea. Dylan Breitenbach, he's a trainee at Moore, and he said this. It was for me. I wish it was mine. He said, "Do you want to be, or rather, rephrased, do you want to tell people that you're a CA, or do you want to be a CA?" I think a lot of people want to tell people that they're a CA. They want the 4 letters CASA after their name, but they don't want to do the things that make them valuable as a CA. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Nah, I agree with you. So for maybe the first 5 or 6 years of qualifying as a CASA, I intentionally didn't use it on my sign-offs and anything, that kind of thing, because it was like, apart from trying to achieve like a humbleness, maybe it was like a misplaced, but maybe it was necessary because I did have this inflated, convoluted view of, I'm a CA kind of thing, but for the longest, for a few years, I didn't do it. Like, nobody would even know it. And you must remember that at this time, I'm also doing my photography and stuff. So many people, till now, I've shot their weddings, I've shot their families, and they don't even know that there was a CASA that was taking their photos. And that was okay for that. But then I started realizing, as I did the personal branding, now that I'm comfortable in my CASA role, and comfortable is a very loose term, because, man, there's degrees of it. Like, the levels that you can get up to. But I think I'm comfortable with where I'm at, where I'm okay to use the CASA brand. So you'll see that even on my LinkedIn. And it's for what I mentioned earlier. Like, sometimes you need to put yourself out there. And the CASA helps to build that. It really does get a step in the door. When I'm speaking to an actuary, when I'm speaking to an engineer, and they see the CASA, there's a mutual respect that comes in. Not because I'm demanding it or anything, but it just helps to do that. But that's coupled with me, I'm hoping that I do the CASA justice, and I represent the brand as it should be.
I really appreciate, and I must send kudos to you for doing it how it's meant to be done. It's funny how today, when people just do what's like meant to be done, they just tell the truth, they just deliver on their promises. You're extraordinary. It's funny, but just kudos to you, man. And I think,
Thanks, man.
I think we can take an example from it, that you guys, if you do the 7 years and you don't do them properly, you coast throughout, you're not trying to understand. In your articles, you're just ticking boxes. You're not actually going to be a CASA. You can just tell everyone that you're a CA. So thank you for the lesson in following through, in doing what's meant to be done. Kevin, I also want to chat about entrepreneurship, because you've been hustling since legally. You've been doing businesses, and let's answer this. Pros and cons of entrepreneurship, and answer what should students do, or what can they do as aspiring entrepreneurs, even as aspiring CAs?
Yeah. I think, again, like I've come across many people that are smarter than me that aren't CASAs, but through my experiences, I do believe that having the CASA, going that route, is probably one of the best tools to give you a baseline for what you need to do as an entrepreneur. It does have its cons having the CASA, I think, because the way that you're trained up, it's to be risk averse. You know, one of the 4 subjects that you're taking is auditing, you're taking financial management, and generally the overarching principle is prudence. You know,
Yeah.
so if you had to choose between taking the expense or parking it on your balance sheet, the prudent thing is to actually take the expense. You know, it's a thinking that permeates through everything that you do. And for a lot of people, it fits in line with their personalities. I'm risk averse, and maybe it's because of growing up in in the poor circumstances. So I tend to be a hoarder, a holder, more pessimistic, more cautious, keep the reserves, that kind of thing. So in that regard, you kind of bump heads sometimes with the entrepreneurship, what is required from you on that side. So the CASA is going to give you a good baseline for it, but you need to be aware of the way that you get trained for it. Likewise, just for example, if I just deviate, if you've gone the engineering route, the guys that I see with engineering have a certain solution mindset, especially the mechanical engineers and the electrical engineers. There's a way that they think about things, that helps them to process solutions. So even if they're doing something that's not related at all to engineering, there's a way that they think. And likewise with the CASA, the way that you're taught to answer a question, to read through the text, to look for certain, things that can tie up with your knowledge and the way you process things. That's great ways of thinking. And it maybe even comes back to that whole maths thing that I spoke about at the start. How this then fits in with entrepreneurship is, entrepreneurship as its pros and cons, I think that you mentioned. So let's maybe just to contrast it is let's talk about the normal route that you would go. So you'd finish up your articles, you may get a job as a financial manager. That's usually the typical route. Become CFO, maybe shift over to the CEO role, and anytime along that way you may get involved with operations. So those are all like if you want to call it like the standard routes. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong. But what happens with those things is like it's kinda you work your way through it, but you're gonna get the salary, you're gonna get benefits, you're gonna get maybe if you're in a startup, you'll get your share options, that kind of thing, or working up, but the idea is that you kind of have a more protected, sheltered pathway, and that speaks to what we were talking about. Maybe you have a predisposition to that, and it's okay. You want to know that you have a salary, and is that's the way that it goes. Like if I want to start a family, I need to know that I'm going to be able to provide for my kids and my wife and all of that. The difference, I think, what happens with entrepreneurship is that, especially if you're doing the full entrepreneurship, like, you're going to go and you need to make salary, you need to make payroll every month for yourself. You need to be selling, you need to be creating your own streams and everything that comes with it, right? So those are like some of the cons that comes with entrepreneurship. You're going to work twice as hard than in your normal job. Can almost guarantee you, because because it's your thing. This entrepreneurship thing. So you're gonna give up a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, whatever it is that you're working. You're probably working harder in any case as a financial manager, longer hours. But you're gonna give that up and you're gonna work 6 to 8. Like I'm talking about round the clock and that kind of thing. So that because you need to make things happen, and it's all on you to make it happen. And many people never, in the entrepreneurship things, based on their choices that they make and the way they set things up, processes, handovers and that stuff, they actually get stuck in that. And then they despise the entrepreneurship thing, because it's, they could have just taken an 8 to 5 and be done with it. And, put your laptop down, but your salary is coming in at the end of the month. Sick days or no sick days. You work, you don't go, you work, you don't work, you're going to get paid. So that's like the downside of entrepreneurship. Some of the upsides that you have with entrepreneurship is that, there's a limit to how little you can get. You can get 0 at the end of the month. Maybe if you're going to debt, yeah, okay, there's a zero, right? But let's just assume you're not going to go into debt, so there's a zero. But when it comes to the upside, like there is literally no cap on it. The only cap is what is it that you're offering, at what price are you offering, and to how many people are you offering it.
Weird.
That's really in your constraints. That's going to be the limit of the upside. Whereas if you're in a normal job, like your upside is like you're restricted to how much they're not going to give you, they're not going to double your salary year on year. They're not going to triple your salary year on year. But in entrepreneurship, if done right, you can double your income in the space of a year. You can
Yeah.
triple it in the space of a year, depending on how you do it. Likewise, bonuses, you're only gonna get X amount, whereas there's guys that can be, like literally shoot for the moon in terms of how much they get. So entrepreneurship, there's an element of adventure that comes with it, of being your own. I don't want to say be your own boss. That's actually a bad. At times, it's a bad thing. But really, the upside is yours, and likewise, the downside is you're gonna carry it. So I think it's where what I was talking about, a bit of part of regrets thing is like not starting earlier, formalizing a lot of what I had done through my undergrad. Through honors was difficult maybe, but even in doing articles and that, there's lots of potential side hustles that could have taken off if I had applied myself on it. But again, it was a case of I didn't know what I didn't know. You don't realize that these things are actually pursuable. Like you don't need to have a CASA and somebody's approval and rubber stamp on it before you actually make something happen. That's one of it. And at least in my case, I had divided attention. I've been very involved in the community, in church and all of that stuff. So I enjoyed my time, spent a lot of my time elsewhere. And that's more for a holistic perspective. But if I didn't have that, I would like go all in like with the entrepreneurship, man. Like really get your CASA as part of the deal, but that business is gonna start in the first year already in high school, and I'm gonna pursue it like crazy.
There's a guy who he's a CA now, but he was a CA trainee just last year. He started a business when he was in varsity. He went to Stellenbosch. His name is Daniel Steinman. It's a business called Old School. Do you know a business called Old School? They sell rugby jerseys.
Haven't heard of it.
I don't know if you've seen the Old School rugby jersey at like a
Oh, yeah.
box game.
Yes,
He's
classic, like a
yes, like a classic rugby jersey, supporter jersey.
yes.
He started that business when he was in varsity just now. He was, I think,
Okay.
second year, third year. And for me, it's like, goodness gracious, there's guys who were trainees who are now running businesses, and this was going out of his article. So he was still in articles doing 8 figures, like
Yeah.
you can, guys, as much as, and Kevin, you mentioned this, you're going to work more than everyone else. It is what it is. You also front a lot of the risk. You can go to zero, maybe even below zero. There's that chance.
Sure.
But you mentioned that you're sheltered, right? My thing around the whole shelter thing is, I think you are sheltered, but it's not that you are not exposed to risk. I just think that in your mind, you're not exposed to risk. Your perception of risk is not there. But any company can go down. I mean, look at Arthur Anderson. You thought a huge consulting firm, one of the big 5, you guys can go and search it up, would never go out of business. A big 5 audit firm, guys.
Yeah.
They get into a bad deal, they're out of business. So really, it's just that you're not fronting the risk. In entrepreneurship, you're fronting it. You got to look it in the eyes.
Yes.
But at the same time, as you said, the upside, it's infinite, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can just look at some recent, can you call it scandals? I think that's maybe South Africa's not big enough to sink these guys, right? But you think of what KPMG was involved with government. Deloitte had some, massive overlooking or audit misstatements that they should have pulled up. It can happen, and I've seen it even in any company. Really, if you think about any company, if things get tough enough, they will cut off the arm to save the body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And unless you, and they will cut as close as possible to like what is absolutely essential. We need a heart, we need a lung, and we'll cut everything else off that needs to happen. If it got that bad, if it got that bad. So generally, the people that are, shareholders and then directors making the call, etc., and then the circles move further and further. And I think if you have this mindset, it's a very, very good thing. And this ties up with the entrepreneurship, the personal branding, and all of
Oh,
that.
yeah.
If you, and not in a selfish way, but if you're looking after yourself and making sure that you have yourself sorted out, right? Even the job that you'll get in a sheltered, I say the sheltered route, it's still part of your journey, but it's not the end game. And I know a lot of CASAs where what they have in their role, that's all that they have. If the company decided to do a headcount reduction tomorrow, they're going to be out of a job. And in the current circumstances, in South Africa, you'd think that the CASAs would be readily employable. It's not the case. At least that's been my experience with it. When I finished up my articles, I went over to the US, did some chit, came back, did a small stint on a job. January 2013, I started looking for employment. I got a job on my 13th 1-3
Sure.
interview, right? So this is, again, guy that's just come out of articles relatively, with the CASA. And I'm not saying that that's going to be the case. Don't get me wrong. Maybe it was just bad timing or I was looking in the wrong net. It can happen, but that's just the reality of it, right? So don't make that false assumption that because I have a CASA, people are going to be lining up to employ me, especially if there's going to be a big cut that happens, because now suddenly it's not just one CASA, it's now 10 of us that are competing and trying to go into the market and that. So one way that I like to think of this, and it comes back to the personal branding, right? Think of yourself as being, in my case, Kevin Botha's Pty Limited, right? So yours is Alunga Pty Limited, right? And even if I go into an employer relationship with a corporate that I'm going to go into, think of Kevin Botha's Pty Limited as being the holding the company itself, and I am going to be consulting almost into that role. So yes, you'll pay me a fixed salary. I'll give you my 160 hours plus in a month, and that's our exchange that we have, right? But I mustn't forget the fact that I'm a company myself. That's going to be going out to it. Now, how would I want that company to show up? If I was going to take it from this corporate to the next corporate, how would I want to show off my stuff? I want to show that he's got this great, that my asset over here, Kevin, even though assets technically, human beings can't be assets unless you're slaves. In this case, let's assume that I can be the asset. How would I want my asset to show up? I want it, I want to show the expertise. I want to show that it's professional, that this asset can talk to CEOs as well as the ops guys. I want to do all of these things, right? And if I keep that mindset about me, then suddenly things change, because then I'm like, okay, fine, you can get the 160 hours over here, but I still got capacity, and I want to create this, I want to build this asset into something that can go beyond who I'm employing it or whom I'm leasing out to or consulting out to. So then when I go to the entrepreneurship, it's still Kevin Botha's Pty Limited that's going to be driving all of this. And that's the importance of the personal brand when you have that. When I'm starting my own business, when I'm doing things, even though I'm let's say I'm employed, but I'm an entrepreneur. Like even within the corporate, I'm still showing entrepreneurship. Or I've got the side hustle on the side, so what I'm doing after hours, I'm building whatever. I'm trying to consult on the side. I'm even running an accounting practice on weekends. I'm taking on jobs. Whatever that is, right? Understand that you need that it's all on you. Nobody, harsh truth. Nobody cares about you, bro. Harsh truth. I'm sorry. Maybe your parents care about you, but even them to an extent, they love you, but you gotta you gotta make it happen for yourself. You know, your family loves you, but you gotta make it happen. They've
Yeah.
got their own problems that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that's why that old spotlight thing, it's a facade because many people aren't even looking at you. They don't really care. Oh, you got the actual truth is maybe, oh yeah, you got the podcast. Maybe you got, when you started out, you got like 12 subscribers and that's like all your cousins and your mother and whoever they had. But apart from that, nobody cares until you actually offer value.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the same thing even with your job. They will cut you. With your business, if it came down to it, they will cut you. So how are you looking after yourself? How are you building your personal brand? So that if I got cut tomorrow from my corporate job, what is it? What's my game plan then already? Okay, fine. Maybe he's got he's got the personal brand. Kevin is out there. I can start applying. If I do go into that, people have seen me before. They see what I'm able to do because I've been putting myself out on social networks and on LinkedIn. I'm just trying to smooth that thing. Or I'm doing my hustle on the side, and now, maybe this is a season of focusing on that. But you do not want to be caught out where you're getting a Section 187, they're cutting, and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do now.
It's a diversification strategy. From a very it's a diversification
you.
strategy. Yes, I did my studying. I did my studying, sir. Yes, sir.
Diversify that risk. I love it. I love it.
Exactly.
Thank you for putting into words
Yes.
in one line what I tried to say in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Look, and that's what I'm also learning about this whole content thing. It's about expanding, minimizing time. So when people haven't talked to other CAs, like 50 CAs, I can talk to them and I can give you the lessons, guys. I can give you the perspective. So, but it's a diversification strategy. And secondly, on your point of no one cares, just for all of those listening or watching, like no one cares that you posted the video. I promise you, until it's good. In fact, they swipe past. So let that be comforting to start creating and practicing. Yes. Get started with video. As Kevin said, video is powerful for improving your likability. Get started. Just post something. I swear no one cares. Nobody cares. If it's not good, no one cares. If it's bad, I promise you it's not even going to touch your brand because no one saw it. It's not even going to touch your brand.
The only caveat that I would add to it, like a bit of a disclaimer, is don't post something that's gonna be negative against you. That's my whole thing. And just keep this in mind. While nobody will see it, but I always want you to think about whatever you put out there. Would it be okay if we put what you just said on a billboard on the N1 where there's 10,000 cars passing by to read your exact words? You see what happens with, we've had it now with the DA. I don't know if you remember, there was somebody that was going to become an MP and then they pulled up this old video where the guy's racist and all of that thing, right? So and it's not to dissuade people from getting onto video, but just don't let your first video be that it's a rant, a racist rant, it's anything. Just put yourself in the shoes of like that. If you just keep that in mind, like what I'm putting out there could one day, be detrimental to my, when I'm a CEO and I'm rocking it. Just keep that in mind, that you keep within the riverbanks of, just, I don't know if don't be overly controversial.
100%.
Political.
I think a great way to put it in a one-liner would be, don't say anything dangerous. I think to practice, you don't have to start with dangerous stuff. It's like with juggling. Don't start juggling knives. You're not a pro yet.
Yeah.
Juggle the little balls. Juggle just 3. Don't juggle 4. And I believe in people speaking their truth, but at the same time, you got to be careful. So I think, fortunately, you are all aspiring CAs. You probably won't juggle knives. But still, hopefully, still get out there, put yourself out there. Kevin, to close us off, if you had a time machine, right, and you could go back to first year, second year, maybe even high school what would you tell him?
I tell him that his life is gonna be awesome. Just keep your head down and double whatever it is that you're doing. That's a very simplified answer, I think, on it. But like, I just encourage, like, start the business, man. I take that back. Let me take back the life is gonna be awesome.
Right.
Like, what I would say is, I just say, like, start the business and go all in on it, man. Like, you got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose. And the reason why I say this is, like, every year it gets more difficult to take more risk. I mean, after articles, I got married, so suddenly I have somebody that's depending on me. We have kids, got 2 kids now. I don't have that risk appetite as I would have had, you know? And that's different to if you were like in first year, bro. You know what it is. You're living on noodles, on 2-minute noodles, and like you can do it, bro. You can start a business with $100, a cell phone, and a laptop. Not even. You can do it. That's what I would tell myself. Like, just go all in, man.
Start the thing. Start the thing, dude.
Start the thing.
Start
Do the
it.
thing.
Do the
Just
thing. Don't talk about doing the thing. Don't watch a video about doing the thing. Don't listen to a podcast about doing the thing, except for this podcast. Do the thing.
Yeah.
Do the thing, man.
Can I just share a story?
Please
Just
do.
A quick one. A quick one. In this space of what we're doing. So I'm in my 3rd year at Articles. I have a first year that I'm working with, and I'm like I enjoy working with him on some of the, you know, in the different projects as we move around. So I'm in the entrepreneurial division at Deloitte. Back in the day, you'd have a lot of smaller clients, very small teams that you'd work with. And I have this guy by the name of Kutsi Chikumba. He's into the social media thing. He's got his iPhone, always having the latest iPhone, and he's like, you know, in between his breaks, delivers on his work, 100%. But he's on it, and he's telling me how he's starting this channel. He's got his YouTube where he does his videos, and I just kind of like, you know, roll my eyes a bit at it, but like, you know, do the thing and that. So he ships off to, you know, he qualifies. I leave, he qualifies, he does his thing, goes and studies in the US and that thing, and he's actually quite high up. I think head of content, could be head of content at TikTok, where he's at the moment.
Yo.
So I don't disagree. Like, you know, of course, there's always a level of fortune and things work at it. But like at that time, he saw something that I couldn't, you know, and he enjoyed what he's doing. And of course, you know, when opportunity meets preparation, that's when, you know, you're away. But that's just to give you the kind of example of when you do the thing. Do it now. Don't wait for the CASA. I promise you, if you think that you have in mind is not working at the moment, like having a CASA is not gonna necessarily make it work. So rather fail now, fail while you're still in your first year, second, third year, fail at the business thing, and try getting that going, because you don't know once you get into the Ferrari that. You've been, you know, you failed at riding a go-kart, you failed at riding your city golf, but you learned on those things. So when you actually get into the Ferrari, you know, like, I'm away. So take that as a great learning lesson. Like, yeah.
Start. Yeah, I think this guy's was in my opinion, most fire episode. But guys, if you have not already, please tell us a belief. Follow this. Now you can subscribe to this because this is on video. This is also on YouTube. If you're listening, you can go watch it, see how Kevin looks. And also, by the way, his LinkedIn is linked in the show notes. So also, guys, send him a request. He is a corporate content creator. He knows all about it. If you need advice, send him a message. If you need services, if your parents need services, if they want to build their own brands, if you know anyone who needs it, Kevin's your guy. But I hope that it does not end, but that it begins in CASA. Kevin, thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Lunga. Thanks for having me, bro.